Red Letter Disciples, it is Zach Zinder. We're back with another great episode today. Joining me in a moment is Chris Johnson, the co-host of Red Letter Disciple. And we have a mission on this podcast to challenge you to be the greatest disciple that you can be. But what does it look like to be a great disciple when a world is constantly changing, especially with all this new technology and this new thing now that's actually not a new thing, but it feels like a new thing called artificial intelligence? On today's show, Kenny Jahng is coming onto the podcast. He is a leading voice in the Christian space about artificial intelligence. And so we're going to talk about all things AI, the pros and cons, how can we use AI both for the glory of Christ or not? And again, you know my heart, and you know that I believe if there is a tool that is going to be utilized in this world by the mass public, we got to figure out how to use it, not to run from it, but how to use it in a way that glorifies God. Plus, have you ever chat GPT'd yourself? Well, I did of myself, and let me just say, I shared the results with Kenny. It was pretty humbling. So you'll hear what chat GPT had to say about me, or lack of what it had to say about me. A little teaser there. Anyway, grateful for Kenny and his leadership in this area. I promise you're going to learn a lot. I want to thank today's sponsor, which is Red Letter Living. It's a company that I get to lead, and I'm so excited. We create resources like the podcast, but our mission is through all of them to challenge people to be greater disciples of Jesus. One of those free resources is called the Red Letter Challenge Assessment. It only takes 7 to 10 minutes as you answer 40 quick questions around what does it look like and how are you following Jesus? Because many of you, you're listening because you want to be a greater follower of Jesus, but maybe you just don't know how. So years ago, we looked at all the red letters of Jesus, specific emphasis on the commands, and located what we believe are the 5 targets that came out of his mouth the most often: being, forgiving, serving, giving, and going. So in partnership with Lifeway Research, we created this assessment that will measure you according to these 5 targets. And best news of all for you, it's totally free. You're going to get results back immediately and be presented with clear, practical next steps, no matter where you rank in each of the targets, so that you can be a greater follower of Jesus. If you haven't done it yet, go to redletterassessment.com. Again, it takes 7 to 10 minutes, so not very long, and it'll give you a really comprehensive return through your email. So with all that being said, we're about to get to Kenny's episode, but I just want to say thank you to those that listen faithfully. It means the world. Let us know if you are listening. Shoot us an email, hello@redletterchallenge.com. You can 5-star review us on whatever platform you listen to. And while you're reviewing us and letting us know, it'd be an honor if you'd hit that plus sign. That usually means follow or subscribe. That really helps get the word out about what we're doing, and also ensures that it hits your inbox every week when the episodes come out. So with all that being said, let's get to today's episode with Kenny Jahng. Let's do this. What?
Today, Zach, we are going to interview someone way smarter than us. That bar is low.
Yeah, I mean,
that bar is low. But today,
always do that.
Yes, about 98% of our guests are smarter, but this gentleman is in the top 1.5 percentile. Zach, tell the people a little bit about this guy.
Yeah, Kenny Jahng is with us today. He's an entrepreneur, a pastor, strategic advisor, founder and CEO of Big Click Syndicate, which creates marketing plans that work for Christian
Sounds like a mafia
ministries. I know, right? But he is super smart. Here's why, Chris. He got a bachelor's from Duke, an MBA from Columbia Business School, and a master's of divinity from Princeton Theological Seminary.
They don't just hand those out at any of those institutions, just so you know.
They don't. Not that we would know, because we didn't get past
we went to Concordia. They let anybody in.
But anyway, in the past year or so, I've heard Kenny really be a leading voice, and why I wanted to have him on the podcast today when it comes to artificial intelligence and what that means for the future of the faith. So Kenny Jahng, welcome to the Red Letter Disciple. How you doing today?
Oh, glad to be here. We're going to have some fun.
Yes, we are.
Yes, we are.
Yeah.
All right. So, Kenny, I want to jump right into it. AI,
Whoa.
I found out, was the word of the year for the Collins Dictionary last year. Cambridge Dictionary had the word hallucinate as the word of the year, which is in AI world. You'll tell us maybe later what that means.
Okay.
Oxford Dictionary The runner-up word of the year was prompt, which we use in AI. Their actual word of the year was Riz.
Riz. All my high school, I teach high school. All the kids walk around talking about how much Riz they have.
And you believe you have a lot, but anyway. So I want to know, like AI, all of these words, prompt, hallucinate, deep fake, even AI itself is so new to most of us. So catch our listeners up on like what artificial intelligence is.
Yeah, I mean, AI has been around for years, and it's baked into so many things that we do on a daily basis. I think what we're talking about right now and all that hype in the news cycle is talking about a flavor of AI called generative AI. And basically, everybody listening today probably has heard of, if not used, ChatGPT.
Oh, yeah.
Which was put up by this company called OpenAI. They released it into the wild at the end of 2022. So it's really not that long ago in terms of technology innovation. And the magic of generative AI basically is that you no longer need to be a super nerd or someone who has a lab coat or that has a PhD to talk to the machine. ChatGPT has figured out how to use natural language, just like you and I are talking with each other, and in multiple languages, so that you could talk to the machine. It does its own brainiac stuff, comes back and gives you the results back in natural language. Yeah. And so that's why it has taken everybody by storm, because who uses natural language in their work on a daily basis? It's just about everybody. And that's why most technologies, right? Most technologies, when they're released, are very niche. It's limited to a specific industry or specific use case. And here, because it's language-based, it's universal. And so that's why it's taken the world by storm.
But it is funny, like a few years ago when companies were starting to use generative AI, like in their customer service, and it was kind of not really well done. So for instance, I had my credit card stolen and I had it on.
Sorry about that.
Well, it was a few years ago.
You left it right out there for me.
I did.
So.
I said free, enjoy the $500 credit limit. Anyway, I had it and I had my T-Mobile bill on auto pay, right?
Yeah.
And so then I was like, I don't want to call it. So I just go to the chat thing, right? And like 20 minutes later, I still haven't paid my bill. Like sometimes AI is frustrating on the consumer end, right?
Right. So you said AI has been around for a while. Obviously, the flavor that I think has caught the world by storm, which we'll get into more, is ChatGPT. But where else was AI like prior to that we are already using that everybody pretty much knows, but maybe doesn't even know? That's artificial intelligence.
A good question.
Yeah, I mean, there's so many different applications. Whether it's basic. Your Amazon recommendation that comes up all the time.
I wish those were worse. I wish those were worse.
Google autocomplete, your Netflix queue, GPS, so many things in finance and education and healthcare. There's all these things where predictive analytics, basically anywhere where brain power is needed at scale. There have been so many different places that we have seen and used AI in our life. And just, I think this new flavor of AI, which is based on nerdy, if we're talking nerdy language, large language models, it's just a different breed. It is, there has been a significant boost, a significant jump, a step up in terms of what we're able to get out of it on a practical basis.
It's good. And it's taken the world by storm, which is why I think we have to be talking about it. And so a little bit of a lead up to this next question. But a couple of weeks ago, I preached a sermon on 1 Thessalonians. And there's a verse that talks about the Thessalonians were known for their faith in God everywhere. So the question was, what are you known for? And so I thought it would be, I asked the people in the room, like, how many of you have Googled yourself? And nearly everybody did. And I was like, that's great. But I recently wondered, like, what AI ChatGPT says about Zach Zender. And so I typed into ChatGPT, tell me about the author, Zach Zender. That was the prompt. And here's what it said. I'm sorry. So at least AI is starting with politeness, right? I'm sorry, but I couldn't find specific information about an author named Zach Zender in my training data. It's possible that he may not be widely recognized or doesn't have a significant online presence.
It's also true that he might not be born.
Yeah. So tell me why in the world I shouldn't hate artificial intelligence now.
What a blow to the ego.
And why you're so passionate about it.
Yeah, I think at the bottom line is that if we're going to cut to the chase, is the potential for positive impact. And in our own space of ministry and kingdom work, I think it has the ability to improve efficiency and ultimately enhance what we do in terms of providing life-serving transformation for humans. I think that there's so many things that you could see outside of the church, whether it be healthcare, education, transportation, manufacturing. There's so many different areas where it can actually provide solutions for complex problems. And so that positive impact, I think, is the bottom line. I think there's other spaces, other things that AI is going to contribute to as it unfolds is allowing us to increase the creativity and the productivity, but the creativity of what we have in our human potential. Personalization and customization of our own experiences and our own workflows is going to happen at scale in the next several years.
Yeah.
And then there's things that I think you and I may not think about on a daily basis, but it's going to help segments of our population where accessibility is going to be huge. That aspect of inclusion of the least and the lost, whether it be translation or people with disabilities or other segments of our communities, AI is going to have tremendous impact for them.
Yeah. So I'd love to know then how like you're using it personally in your space. I know that you're in the church space, but you're also in the marketing space. And so, yeah, tell me how you've been using this recent flavor, ChatGPT, or something like it in what you're doing.
Yeah, we have, I guess, multiple tools that we use on a daily basis. And then there's a whole smattering. Like I think the last quarter, I think there's over 3,000 AI specific tools that have launched as new services in the world, right? So it's just mind blowing. And when you have that phrase, there's an app for it, that is no joke, right? So I think depending on what you're doing in front of you in your work, you probably have some sort of application that AI can be integrated into, whether it be a very basic one. Grammarly is a popular tool many people probably have heard of.
Love it.
Is a basic AI tool that is better than just a spell check or a grammar check. The joke I keep telling is that my 7th grade English teacher probably loves Grammarly because she used to yell at me all the time saying that Kenny, you're always writing in the passive voice, not the active voice. We all know those types of things, right? You're putting too much clutter in your paragraphs. It's not convincing, and Grammarly helps you with all that kind of stuff. I think content production, that's where we're using long form content tools like JasperVIP.com is one of the tools that I love. That ChatGPT, Bard, Claude, they're great, but they're not geared for workplace necessarily in terms of long form content. So JasperVIP.com is one of those places where they have like a Google Docs type of experience. And they have templates and things like that. And then now image and video generation is the next piece that we're experimenting with. So, ChurchTechToday.com is one of the properties that we own. And you probably see the same struggle, especially with Christian topics, finding stock photography and images that are companions to pieces that you produce. Sometimes it's hard.
Yeah.
And now with Midjourney or these other image generation tools, you're able to produce custom, amazing graphics, whether it be illustrations or photography. All these different genres of image generation is now at your fingertips. And so on a very basic level, those are some of the ways that we're using on a daily basis.
Speaking of fingertips, I have done this thing.
Speaking of fingertips.
This is a great segue.
What a segue, yeah.
This is the best segue of all time because I wanted to ask you this. My kids, like I said, I teach in a Christian school, and they always go around and they'll be like, make Zach float in space and rockets exploding. And like 45 seconds later, you know where I'm going. Like the space is amazing. The guy's floating. It looks like Zach and he's got 6 fingers. Why is it every time I generate AI art that always has 6 fingers?
Only 6? Sometimes it's 16 fingers.
Yeah,
right?
what is going on? These robots cannot do hands.
Yes.
What's so hard about a hand?
Someone joked with me the other day that said it's an upsell just waiting to happen. For $9.99 more, you can get humans with just 10 fingers. I'd pay that every day, wouldn't you?
Right, that's good.
That's awesome.
The ultimate business model.
That is so funny. I love this picture, but can we just erase a couple of fingers?
I think it's great, man, and yeah, I love like so what you're already talking about. Like my wife and I, we use Grammarly all the time, and what a great tool it is, like to propel us. And I love personally in Grammarly seeing like I usually will put my draft in, and it'll be like a, you know, they always give a score 0 to 100. So I'm usually coming in at like a C minus.
Yeah.
But I love seeing that number go up, and you know, getting a 99 or 100 at the end. And
one time he submitted to Grammarly and it said, "Are you serious?"
Oh, really? But so using these tools are really awesome. I heard you say though, and I'm curious because I hear this a lot. Do you think it will like squash our creativity, or will it propel our creativity in that sense?
And
because
I want to follow up on that. I've been thinking a lot about, because I've been messing around with ChatGPT and I'm like, write me a short film about blank, blank, blank. And sometimes it comes back and it's pretty good. Like, I wonder if it's going to start taking, as it improves, is there a risk that it's going to be taking some really creative jobs?
Yeah. So the answer is the same thing with every technology innovation front that has come our way. And that is, yes, it will eliminate many, many tasks and roles that we have in front of us. But that's been with every innovation front. The second act is always, what does it open up? And the answer typically has been, it has opened up many more opportunities for us. And so that's the question, I think, that if you're in a role that is at risk where AI can do a better job or have more efficiency than what you're providing, then it is an opportunity for you to examine that and say, is it the time for me to upskill, to evolve what I'm doing, to figure out how to provide better value by adopting AI, right? And I think anybody who's been in the space for this last couple of years for AI will agree with this, and they say this all the time too, is that AI specific is not here to take your job.
Yeah.
But the next guy or the next woman who understands how to use AI to do your job will take your job.
Oh.
Right?
Yeah. Yeah, because there's even a skill with using it's technology, and there's skills with using all technology, and some are better at it than others. I was really curious. I think it was a CNN article in the business space, even like the CEOs, they polled around 100 of the most powerful CEOs in our nation, and 42% of them believe that AI has the potential to destroy humanity in 5 to 10 years.
I'd give it 15.
That's crazy. Like, should we be listening to these business leaders? Like, what are the rational and irrational fears that with this new technology that people have?
So one of the things that we talk about in this space, the nerdy term is called AGI, Artificial General Intelligence. And that's where all these fear-based narratives are coming from. AGI basically means it's the point or the milestone where the machine becomes smarter than us as humans, right? So when the machines can not only learn by themselves and figure things out for themselves, autonomously make decisions without us. And if you look at all the experts in the field, they are all predicting anywhere from 5 years from now to 20, 25 years from now. And that means almost everybody listening to this interview right now, in your lifetime, in our lifetime, that milestone is going to happen.
Yeah.
Right? It's not sci-fi. It's not in the future. This is a reality that might happen in the next couple of years, literally. And so I think we need to figure out, what does that mean? And that's where I think a lot of this fear comes from. I like to use the term that everyone is using now is FOLO. This is the age of FOLO, fear of looming obsolescence. right? And so, are we?
So not
as
FOMO, not
humanity-
FOMO anymore, but
No,
FOMO.
it used to. I said FOMO used to be the hot word with social media and Facebook that has ruined everything in our lives, right? No longer. We now have a different villain, and that's AI, and everyone's fear of looming obsolescence is the state. Now, I don't think it's that bad in myself, but I do think that that's where that narrative is coming from. When is it going to happen? I think, we're doomed probably next Tuesday at 3:30. Should I send you a calendar invite for that?
Please.
That's when the world is coming to an end.
Yeah, so apparently you've never seen the movie War Games where Hal takes over and starts a global nuclear war. Okay, so no, the other day, right by our school, by our little high school, there's a truck driving school. And my son, who's a sophomore in high school, I was driving to work, and he said he's really into cars. And we could see all these people getting ready to get in their trucks, right, to go do their driving test. And he's like, hey, Dad, do you think that's a good idea to become a truck driver right now and invest all that money? Because, Tesla's already got self-driving trucks. I like what you're saying that basically, okay, so we are going to lose some of these jobs, but if we're equipped to know about AI, then we're making ourselves a more valuable employee. But you said sometimes when we have these inventions and it kind of takes out a certain occupation. There's a part of me that said maybe the Amish had it right. I don't know. Maybe we just go back no electricity. But what about that? Not everybody's going to be well equipped. Your average truck driver is not going to be AI savvy. Is there going to be a point where there's just a mass of blue collar workers that don't have a field to work in?
Yeah, I think, outside of AI, there's some interesting discussions about the jobless future, that we have advanced as society so far enough that we don't need full employment anymore at some point in the future. And then do we just turn into a society? What's that animated? Is it WALL-E?
Yes.
That animated movie where everyone's just sitting back. They can't even pick up their smoothie or drink.
Right.
The machine does it for them, right? So I do think that we have to start thinking about that. I think the church in particular has an opportunity to start thinking about it from different angles in terms of what do we as the church offer the public square in terms of not just job reskilling services and education, right? Historically, the church has invested in hospitals and universities and education and things like that for society. Do we have an opportunity to do that kind of stuff here for education? But beyond that, I think it's an identity question, a significance and meaning question, where the majority of our society is centered around work and vocation, and that's part of your identity. When that gets removed, where you don't need to work anymore for large segments of society, or certain segments don't need to work and certain do, then you have the haves and the have-nots. There's all these societal issues that start to come up. Where does the church play a role to fulfilling the support systems and quite frankly, our biblical worldview of identity? I think those are the things that start to really come into play.
That's a really good point. There was this church that we know of in Chicago. Their demographic completely changed, and a bunch of Hispanic migrants had moved into the area, and they were unemployable, and their numbers were going down. And all of a sudden, they got together and they said, "Hey, why don't we do ESL classes?" And 2 weeks later, they had 300 people in their sanctuary, and they're retraining them for vocation. So that's the churches do. I think it's a great point. It could be a golden opportunity for us to dig back in as churches and pastors and say, how can we better serve the community?
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, I always thought AGI was adjusted gross income.
That's
what
true.
did you say it was?
Yeah.
Kenny?
Artificial general intelligence.
Yeah.
General intelligence. Yes.
So I think I've heard you say, like when I asked rational fears versus irrational, I think I've heard you say so far, and maybe they're not fears, they're more truths. One of them is that, yeah, artificial intelligence will be smarter than you. If it's not already, it will be. That's rational, and we should know that. I think I heard that it absolutely could disrupt some of the job field, maybe not all of it, but some of them.
Yes.
Are there like irrational fears too of people taking it too far, or is it just so new of a technology that honestly nothing's irrational at this point and everything's on the table?
Yeah, again, I think it's it's like every other fear that we have as humans. We tend to lean into the hyperbole, right? The extremes of things, and we are also, I think, influenced by Hollywood and stories and things that we have, seen and heard as we've grown up. And so I would just say it's a caution. Now, on the other side, I think there is a danger of over-reliance on AI. I was just coaching a team, and that prompted a social video that I just put up as a reel that talks about, like, are we looking at AI, some of us, as the hammer, just going around trying to find nails in everything that we see, right? It's not necessarily the solution for everything.
Yeah.
And it's not the savior for everything.
Right.
So I think there's a risk of over-reliance on some new shiny object that has come along.
Yeah, that's good. So I want to back up, like just we're always at Red Letter, like really curious, like what Jesus's response, and obviously he never responded to artificial intelligence that I know of. Maybe you'll tell me I'm wrong. But what do you think Jesus would say about artificial intelligence?
So I think this is somewhat of a critical question because when you have people that are complete opponents or fearful of AI, who actually have never even used it or hasn't seen or witnessed how it actually works, especially. The question sometimes comes down to what your belief is and your relationship is with technology. Do you believe that there can be any divinity in the digital? Do you believe that God actually has given us technology as a gift, or is it a curse and something that's part of the broken world? I think you have to make that decision up front. And once you make the decision of what you believe technology is in our world, then that starts to have divergent paths in terms of what narrative you actually buy into. Does that make sense?
Yeah. So basically everybody, because like I think it was maybe Dallas Willard that once talked about, the phrase was like terrific servants but terrible masters, right? And so in technology, I think AI is that. Is it your master? Is it your servant? And how can you use like technology? How can you use AI? Because I think there's great power if we use it well.
Yes.
And so how do we use it well? And then on the backside of that question, I know that there's not, it doesn't seem like, we had Joshua K. Smith who wrote the book Robot Theology on our podcast not long ago. And he says one of the major issues with this space is there's just not Christian leaders that are influencing this like at the top. And so here we have this thing that could be a really good steward, but there's also not the leaders. And so how does a person, decide whether technology and AI is good for them or is a great tool, or how do you help someone with that?
Yeah, there's some writing I'm trying to do about some of the theological leanings of our approach to AI, responsible use. At the end of the day, it's a stewardship issue of technology, right? And I think some of the things that I would say, Jesus might point back to, kind of like the bookmarks in his book that he would say, hey, borrow this book and then see my Post-it notes in there. I was looking at Proverbs 3, where he talks about, trust the Lord with all our hearts and lean not on our own understanding, right? Yeah. And that we want to acknowledge him in all our ways. I think that principles like that, I think, are very easy to map into how we are actually dealing and using AI. Like that would remind me in terms of using all these technological developments with humility. We don't want to build a Tower of Babel and not exalt God in everything that we are using and building with AI. We want to acknowledge the limitations of our knowledge, our understanding, and continuously be in a posture where we're seeking wisdom and discernment in how we use AI, right? And so there are all these things that I think Jesus would say, hey, let's look at the golden rule, Matthew 7, right? Like he instructs us to treat each other like we would want to be treated. So when we use AI, are we always using it in a way that's just self-profit motivated, that gets me ahead of everybody else? Or are we doing it in a way that prioritizes some concepts of like life-serving, well-giving, well-being for the people around us, the dignity of everyone, compassion, justice, privacy issues come into play, right? Those types of ethics where I think those dynamics of teaching that Jesus has given us easily maps into our daily use and our workflows of AI.
It's good. All right, so we're on an elevator. You got 30 to 60 seconds to tell me the same question that you just put on us of like, is AI a tool that is good? Is it evil? I want to know what's Kenny's personal opinion on this. But we only got 30 to 60 seconds, so you got to tell me quick in a way that I understand.
It's a fast elevator. Yeah.
That's the elevator.
Yeah.
I hit the stop button, emergency stop button, so we have an hour.
We got to have a much longer conversation, like an hour on a podcast, man.
Yes. I think it's like any other technology tool. It's not the savior. Jesus is the savior, but this is not the savior. And it's one of those things where what you put into it is what you get out of it. I think that is the tenet that I would say is like the more you educate yourself and become aware of what it actually is, you start to understand very quickly what is it good for, what is it not good for, and how might I use this in anything that I'm doing. You have to have that willing suspension of disbelief to entertain how AI might be put into the formula of what you're doing in front of you. But be very quick to disqualify it if it doesn't meet your objectives. And so I think you need a level head on you to actually appreciate what it does. But again, at the end of the day, you have the option of not using it.
But
I just got to my floor.
But it's not like it's going away. It's going to be more more. You probably won't even notice it.
And I think with other technology, especially social media, with limits, of course, everybody has to figure out what that means for themselves, like with AI. But I'm always like, these are tools that are not going away. We have to figure out how to use them. Yeah. And so, like, how do we use it? And so I'd love to know, like, do you have stories or examples of like someone already, even though it's still a new technology, where let's admit the ones at the top leading this technology aren't always thinking from a Christian worldview?
Well, the perfect example is when we interviewed, what was his name? Joshua. Yeah. And he was getting tons of questions about, I want to have a robot mate. Right. Like a robot AI mate, and they were drilling him with questions. I was like, oh my gosh, I can't. Yeah.
So, but what have you seen positively so far, even in its infancy, this new flavor, ChatGPT?
Yeah, I some really basic things where I've had pastors who. So we talk about AI in sermon writing. And there's a lot of people that just have this visceral allergic reaction that says, no, you cannot write sermons with AI. And the metaphor that I constantly using in my teaching and workshops is that you should not look at it as a push button vending machine or like a machine in the public square where we go up to the machine like an ATM. You go up, use ChatGPT, you take what you get and you leave and you go use it. It's more like the smart seminary intern on your team and that you have a relationship with and you have a conversation with. So you would never assign an intern to write your sermon and then go preach it for you. You would probably assign them to draft something or do some research, and then you would work with the intern to say, hey, our church, we have these theological leanings, not this one. Go back and try again. Maybe you should look into the work of Tim Keller because we love his work and we resonate with that type of theology and rework it, right? You go back and forth with feedback to actually do that kind of stuff. And I think that is the metaphor that actually is most helpful for people of how to use AI going forward.
Yeah. So what about people who aren't pastors? Like it makes sense for pastors to, you can go back and forth. It can be a really great ally. What about for the everyday disciple? How do they use it in maybe a similar way or a different way?
So I think it's role playing is a really good one. So sometimes you have difficult conversations ahead and you have to have these difficult conversations.
I got one later with Chris, so this is good. Yeah.
And sometimes you don't have that accountability partner at your side. I've had seasons where my ribs are totally bruised all the time because I've got my friend just, poking me that says, Kenny, you have to have that. You need to do that, or you need to make this decision, right? And so sometimes you have apprehension of making that conversation. You could actually go to ChatGPT or Bard or Jasper, any of these tools, and set that up and say, I want to say this. Is there a better way of saying it? How would it be received? You can actually ask it from the other point of view. Is there something that I'm missing? Can you ask me questions to help you help me better? That's a great, conversation loop that you can have with an AI. You don't need to know all the answers. You need to just tell them what your objective is and say, I don't know how to approach this. Can you ask me some questions to help you figure out how to support me the best? So those are some ways. I think there's basic ways to use AI to improve what you're writing, to put something in and say, hey, how do I make this clearer, stronger logical arguments, persuasive, longer, shorter? Like there's all these ways that you can do it on a basic level. But I think there's outside of that, I think it's thinking of it as a team member who's an advocate on your side, who has a good attitude and will just relentlessly give you support no matter how many questions you ask.
And he's free, or she.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, there is paid versions. I found out, by the way, after I preached that message where I told you what ChatGPT said about me, our communication director here at church said, hey, by the way, on the paid version, they do know who you are. So that was, I guess, halfway nice. You got to pay.
And you also had 5 fingers in the picture.
Right. I think that's really great. I think there's a number of people out there, probably even some of my listeners, that when they hear artificial intelligence, it's a new technology, so it feels so hard. So I don't think many, I shouldn't say many, there are some that haven't even entered into it. What I was greatly surprised by was how easy it is to use it and play around with it.
Yeah.
And so maybe speak to the person who's hesitant of entering into even this, because it feels like one of those things that if once I enter in, I got to put a lot of time and effort. And I was like, you don't, but you may want to once you find out how easy it is.
Yeah, I think it's like Google. How did you first learn how to use Google? So what I would recommend when we have an individual leader that we coach for, even in teams with individual leaders, when we have individual sessions, instead of trying to figure out how to do something with their work, we usually say, hey, Zach, hey, Chris, what are your personal interests? I'm trying to figure out what your WIFM is, the what's in it for me, right? Yeah. So if you are a cook, right, an amateur cook, you watch Food Network all day long, and I would say, hey, what's a dish that you were thinking of making, but you just don't know how to make? Why don't we ask ChatGPT for some tips or recipes, or what are some of the techniques, or tell me what are the concepts behind that type of cuisine, right? If your dog is your life, maybe you ask certain things about how to healthy living for your dog, or food, or exercise routines,
or how do I get a better life? How do I get a better life than just
yes. Right. So you're trying to figure out the WIFM. What's in it for me first on a personal basis, and then just to have an expert at your fingertips and ask those questions, like free consultation, basically. That's the way I would say how you start. The second one, I think, is honestly on a practical basis is start to have conversations about it with other people. Yeah. If you are a leader, if you have a team, even if you're not the team leader, you can suggest this. I would have a lunch and learn. I would have a team meeting dedicated to it, where you're just trading notes and saying, hey, has anyone used AI? Can you share some examples of how you're using it for work, but also even outside of work? And just have a show and tell, round robin, and you will be amazed at what happens in those sessions. And then there's a lot of educational opportunities out there. Like at AIforchurchleaders.com, we have monthly live AI workshops that go through very simple things. There's a lot of books and videos and other things that you can actually consume. So I would say start small. Don't have these lofty expectations. It's not going to solve everything. Start small. Have a conversation.
That's good. Yeah, we use it regularly. Excuse me. I know that. Yeah, if my wife, we've got a few extra ingredients in the fridge. She'll just type into Chat GPT like, I've got this, this, and this. Give me some recipe ideas. Or my youngest son was going on a weekend trip with his grandparents, and so like throw together an itinerary. They were going to the city of Cleveland. To what we can do with a 12-year-old boy in Cleveland, Ohio, and it just it's amazing how quickly with those things. It spits out something that then, cool, we'll take it from there. We're not necessarily going to do everything that it says, but now it's taken a little bit of that, busy work creativity, if you will.
Yes.
So now we can get to another place and be like, even at a higher creative levels, which I think is so cool. So that's awesome, man. So because I think there's a number of people too that I think we need, again, Christians and disciples in every space, every spectrum. And if we're not seeing that, there's a lot of younger listeners that, why shouldn't they be moved more to be in a position where they can influence artificial intelligence? I think sometimes we need leaders and disciples in all of these. And so, what would you say to the young person who's savvy with this and is interested? How can they continue to go forward with it?
I think the number one way is to do two things. One is connect with other peers that are actually using AI. This is very early in this innovation trend that's happening, and no one knows it all. If you meet any know-it-all, you need to run, right? You gotta discount them. So talking to peers and finding those peers that actually are using AI is the number one thing. The second one is publish. Document what you're doing, and you'll be amazed at how quickly you will be able to contribute to any sphere of influence that you have. And I'm talking very simple things where you say, hey, I came across a new tool today, and then just explain what you did. You might be able to share examples, and you'll just be amazed at how much traction that you get in terms of gaining influence and being invited into those conversations where, as a Christian, you will have disproportionate amount of influence on this topic than you would many other topics.
Yeah, and tell me if you think I'm right or not, or what your opinion would be, because I think I've heard a lot that, with ChatGPT, it just came out at end of 2022, and there's a lot of people that think the world wasn't ready for it, and so we don't even know how to regulate it, and so I think we're going to be reverse engineering a lot of regulation when it comes to, that's again one of the many platforms, but I think we're still early enough in this that it's not too late for the Christian disciples to get in the game and actually be speaking into this. Is that what you're seeing too? What do you think about the regulation and where we're at with it, and where it can be going in the next several years?
Yeah, I had an interesting conversation, an interview on an AI podcast I did for Exponential with Brian Buford. He's a pastor. And one of the stories that he brought up that was interesting was back in the advent of the camera, right, where that was new. They didn't understand at that point what you could do with camera and photography and video. That Hollywood wasn't even born yet. This whole genre of things that people before the camera and then at the advent of that camera never understood how it could be used. We're going through that same mind-blowing explosion now. We're trying to just make funny, silly songs in the style of Billy Joel, right?
Yes.
With poems and stuff like that with ChatGPT. 10 years from now, 5 years from now, it's going to be used in ways that you and I cannot even fathom right now. If we were pushed to the limit right now, we would not understand how this is going to be used. And so that's why I think we do need to have actual practitioners in the space so that we can contribute to those new ideas and new directions. The only way you're going to be able to have that inspiration is to be able to see it in use, right? Someone just recently said a ship would not sail without being in motion. It has to be undocked in order to get to the destination. And so same thing here. in order to get to that final destination, you need to be undocked. You need to start using it in order to figure out what do you do next. In order to understand where you're going to turn next with this innovation thing, we need more practitioners.
It's good. So get involved. I think that's awesome, man. Cool. Kenny, we ask all of our guests if you could challenge our listeners to be a greater disciple this week. If they could do one thing, what would you challenge them to do this week?
I would say some self-reflection examination of that question I posited earlier on what your belief in theology is about technology. And the question is like, did God give us technology as a gift, or is it a curse and part of our broken world? And what's our relationship with it? Do we believe and trust that God has given it to us for some potential to redeem our relationships around us, the communities that we're in, all that kind of stuff? Is there potential? Is there divinity in the digital? I think that self-reflection is a very important exercise for us. And that will then start to unfold a lot of choose your own adventure steps for discipleship ahead.
I think it's so great. All right, listeners, if you take that challenge on and you answer that question, what's technology? Is it something that God's given to us as a gift? Is it a curse? Really wrestle with that, because I agree with Kenny. It's gonna really shape and transform. And my personal thoughts are, if these are things that the world is going to be using one way or the other, let's at least understand them, get into them, no matter where you fall on that, and let's be a light in the midst of what may be considered darkness for some of you. But wrestle with that question. So if you do that, let us know. #RedLetterDisciple. We want to encourage you on. All right, Chris, what you got for Kenny?
Okay, so Kenny, Zach, we've learned a lot today. We came in kind of skittish about AI. Right? Worried that it might take over the world. Worried that it might launch the next nuclear war. But Kenny has calmed us. But Kenny, I went to ChatGPT during this conversation, and I asked ChatGPT to write a 30-second commercial about a skittish Pastor Zach and a skittish Pastor Chris who were terrified of AI with a genius Kenny calming us. Here we go. Can I read this to you?
Absolutely. Let's do it. We need some background music.
Oh, yeah. Come on, Owen. Where's the background?
Come on, post-production. Let's go.
Oh, we'll do it and fix it in post. All right, here we go. The scene opens with Kenny, a respected genius in a lab coat, surrounded by blinking computers and futuristic gadgets. He's enthusiastically typing away on a keyboard. Kenny says, "Hi. I'm Kenny. You might know me as the guy who can calculate pi to the last digit while juggling oranges. But today, I'm here to talk about something even more mind-boggling." Dramatic pause. AI. Cut to Pastor Zach and Chris standing in a church pulpit. That is so stereotypical. Looking slightly bewildered. I'm Pastor Chris. He's Pastor Zach. And we've been hearing a lot about AI lately, Zach says, and some folks are downright terrified. And I say, but fear not, congregation. Kenny is here, and he's going to set the record straight.
Wow, there you go.
Cut back to Kenny, who's now wearing a pair of AI-inspired glasses, looking really professional. Kenny says, that's right. AI isn't about robots taking over the world. It's about making our lives easier. Cut to a comical scene of a robot struggling to fold laundry while a person effortlessly uses AI-powered laundry machine. Kenny says, with AI, we can solve complex problems like predicting the weather or even finding the perfect Netflix show, like it was listening to us, for your mood. Cut back to Zach and Chris. Zach says, so you're saying we shouldn't be afraid of AI? Kenny says, exactly. AI is just like having a really smart friend who can help you out when you need it most. I say, well, that's a relief. Zach says, thanks, Kenny. The three of them share a fist bump to upbeat music plays in the background. Voiceover. So remember, folks, embrace the future with Kenny and leave your AI anxieties at the door. And scene.
Wow. That was all in 30 seconds?
I said, I don't know. I mean, I said 30 seconds. I think we've calmed everybody's fears, honestly.
Yeah, I think that what you did there was essentially what this episode was. So there you go.
I like that ChatGPT mentioned almost everything that that Kenny mentioned. Like AI is a smart friend, a smart free friend that's trying to make our life easier. I like the comical robot folding the laundry. I think that's good.
Kenny, man, you have been a blessing for us today. Hey, if people want to connect with you, where can they find you these days?
I'm available on most of the social channels. Not hard to find me. I think one of the best places that I can point people to meet other peers and see what other leaders are doing is our Facebook group. We have a community of over 5,000 leaders right now, trading notes every day. It's called AI for Church Leaders. You can get the link at aiforchurchleaders.com, and would love to have you as part of our community.
Awesome. And we'll put that in the show notes. Is that a Facebook group? Instagram? Where are you guys?
That's a web.
It's a Facebook group, but you can go to aiforchurchleaders.com. There's a link there. There's also some other resources, free ebook, awesome. A primer for ChatGPT. So all that stuff is available at the website.
Awesome, bro. Thanks so much for being a blessing and helping so many of us. And hopefully 5, 10, 20 years from now, we haven't been taken over by AI and we can have another great conversation about all the great ways disciples of Jesus are using it to show who Jesus is to the world. Blessings, man. Appreciate you.
Thank you.
Thanks for having me.
Yep. Kenny Jahng, thank you so much for being a part of our podcast today and for dealing with Chris's ridiculousness and also for leading the way in the very important current conversations we're having around artificial intelligence. To connect with Kenny or any of the resources he talked about today, there were a lot of them, go to redletterpodcast.com. That's where we have our show notes, and it's also the place where you can find out more about what I mentioned at the beginning, the free Red Letter Challenge assessment that can measure you according to 5 discipleship targets that came out of Jesus' mouth the most often. You can take that at redletterassessment.com, or again, go to redletterpodcast.com and you'll find the link there. Next week, I'm bringing my friend Michael Koulianos onto Red Letter Disciple. Since this is a podcast designed to help people follow Jesus, when I think of Jesus, he is often described as one that had a 3-part ministry: preaching, teaching, and healing. And I know in my circles, at least, we talk a lot about the first 2, preaching and teaching, but not so much on the healing. Well, Michael Koulianos has an incredible gift in healing and has a healing ministry that has touched millions of lives. And so we talk about healing. Why does God heal some and not others? And really dive deep into what healing looks like today. Plus, Michael offers a really powerful healing prayer that tune in, listen in, and see if God may have healing for you or for someone that you love. So it's happening all next week. Don't miss it. The way to not miss it, again, I said it before at the beginning, is follow or subscribe on whatever your favorite podcast listening or viewing platform is. We should be on all the major ones, and we'll see you back next week for the Red Letter Disciple.